Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Friedemann and I'm back on live to talk about something that so many people are struggling with and so many people feel also completely powerless with, which are those intrusive thoughts. You know, the thoughts that are coming into your head and you sure don't want to have a thought like this. And there are 4 of those intrusive thoughts that feel extremely stressful. So the first is the thoughts that make you really not trust yourself, make you actually worry about yourself and doubt yourself. And those are the thoughts that are about, let's say, harming other people. You're in the kitchen and you see a knife and then all of a sudden the thought comes up, what if? What if I take the knife and hurt someone I really care about? Or you are going, to a window and you ask yourself, what if I would jump? Or what if I would push someone out of the window? Thoughts that make absolute no sense, but they make you really startled because you wonder, where does this thought come from? Oh my God, why am I thinking something like this? Or some people think like, what if I'm in love with my sibling? Or what if I'm not really good at my job and maybe just sitting here and pretending? Thoughts like this can really make you feel worried and doubt yourself. And then there are these deeper worry thoughts which are about your health. For example, what if I'm having cancer here? There's a little spot on my skin. Or what if my heart is kind of hurting? What if I'm going to have a heart attack? And again, these thoughts are just coming relentlessly at you and you feel powerless with them. And the more you try to resist those thoughts, the stronger they get. And the third one are those replay thoughts. These are the thoughts you see something that really bothers you or something that you really found like, oh my God, that's horrible, that's shocking, an accident, or maybe some disturbing movie, and you cannot let go of it. It just goes over and over in your head and it never stops. So those thoughts are also very intrusive because you definitely don't want to choose them. They are just coming up. And the last ones are those obsessive thoughts that are about something or someone that you actually want to forget about, and you still cannot help it because it always comes back. Maybe someone dumped you and you feel really hurt and you always have to think about this person and you always think about how could you have prevented it from happening? Why is this, why did this happen? Or maybe there are these thoughts that, come up about, a fight that you had with someone and then you're constantly just thinking about how much that hurt you. Again, these are thoughts that are just obsessively, intrusively entering your mind, and you feel more and more stressed and powerless because of them. Now, I had often a thought when I was younger about killing myself, and it was just something that I also felt like, came up, and all of a sudden I was really startled and scared of this thought. And what I noticed is that the more I gave this thought attention, the more it was sticking in my head. And it was something that was a vicious spiral. And you may actually feel this too, that there is a thought that's intrusive. It really makes you wonder if you could do something, or if whatever you're thinking will actually happen, or it makes you wonder if you're going mad or crazy or something is wrong with you. And by wondering, you are creating anxiety. You're creating stress inside of you. And this is when the thought becomes sticky. Because in that moment, you're giving the thought kind of energy. And the thought all of a sudden, becomes more and more alive and takes more and more real estate in your head. So what do you do? Because this is when you had those thoughts, several times, you're kind of expecting them to come back. You're kind of waiting for them to appear. And so you go already into the anticipatory anxiety and boom, the thought comes up, and then you're getting again this anxiety even more, you're going in the spiral. So how do you get out of it? What do you do? And to get out of the fear and the anxiety of the intrusive thinking, you have to really understand a few things about those thoughts. And that's what I want to talk about. Because the reason why those thoughts seem to be so awful is not because they exist. Because the truth is, most of us, 90% of people have weird thoughts. And I think this number is going way up because we are just also seeing more weird things. Yesterday I watched, I don't know if you have watched Luther on Netflix. Jesus, it was so weird just to see, and they always have kind of weird villains, and that was certainly a very weird one and a very disturbing one. But there are so many disturbing ideas and images that enter into your mind, and they stick with the subconscious, and then they're bubbling up, just like we have sometimes these bubbling up nightmares at night that is kind of a dumping and releasing. So the more we have these inputs from the outside, the more of those little burps of weirdness that we are absorbing will happen. So it is absolutely possible that we will get more and more of those thoughts. The question is, are we giving those thoughts any power by getting scared of them, by calling ourselves, oh my God, we are, somehow, again, ill, going mad, there is something wrong with me? Or are we able to just calmly observe and remind ourselves of 4 very important facts about those thoughts? The first one is, as I just said, it's normal. It can be absolutely some kind of a mental dump that just, your mind, especially this deeper part of the mind, does. When I watched for the first time The Exorcist, I tell you how many, every Wednesday times for a few years, I had at least 2 or 3 thoughts about a head spinning and some, green gulp coming out of the mouth of this little girl coming into my mind. Thank God I was able to quickly let it go, because I knew it was just a regurgitation of whatever I saw. So it's normal. It's not necessarily something that you have to hold on to. In some ways, these thoughts are a little bit like, flipping through the channel and seeing all these random images. And so don't be scared of it. The second thing is, those thoughts are not in your control. It's a subconscious. So that when they're coming up, doesn't mean that you conjure them up. It just means like, okay, they're coming up, so I don't control it. And I also don't want to give it more life, or I don't want to give it my control. But as much as you cannot control those thoughts from coming up, you can only control how you respond to them. These thoughts don't control you. So whatever you are seeing there in your mental imagery is not something that is predicting the future or can control your actions or any of those things. Those things are simply coming up, you look at them, and then you move on. You don't have to let those thoughts be a predictor of your mental state or a predictor of your future action or anything like that, or maybe what's going to happen in your life. So those thoughts are literally, in most cases, just thoughts. And those thoughts are not literal. And that's the thing that I want to come to in a moment. Those thoughts are not necessarily seen as, okay, this is exactly what could happen or what I will do. They are often much more like, metaphorical. And again, I come back to dreams, because those thoughts come from that deeper part of the mind, the subconscious. And so because they are more anchored down there, they are speaking more in the language that is metaphorical, creative. Just like when you're dreaming you can fly, or you're dreaming that you're chased, doesn't mean that someone is chasing you. It's just, again, a metaphor for how whatever you're feeling or how you are right now seeing the world, the subconscious processes. So how do you let go? Well, you remind yourself of all those things I just said. It's normal. It's not something you can control. It's not something that has control of you. It doesn't predict anything about the future or doesn't say anything about your sanity, and it is also not to be taken literal. So you remind yourself of that, and then you can not fight it. So don't go into the just a thought, keep it going, go away. But more like, something where you ultimately go into releasing the thought and letting it go through. A client of mine told me that, and that's a really good method, just to say passing through, another thought passing through. But then they found in a great research project that after you let the thought through, rather than going into, maybe, oh, what if it's still there? Or what if I'm, actually really doing what the thought is telling me? You are shifting your mind into something positive. Because what the thought often, created was anxiety, stress, doubt, worry. And so that's almost like you have a neural pathway that says, intrusive thought means there is something that's gonna freak me out in a moment. And instead, you're gonna create a new neural pathway by having an intrusive thought, and then you go into, just humming happy birthday, or, dancing a little bit on plays, or listening to some nice music, or, patting your dog or cat, something that makes you feel good and something that demonstrates to your subconscious, all fine, nothing to worry about, I'm okay. And that is really something that works very, very well. Now, if a thought continues to come up in different, themes or patterns, but you notice there is something that just seems to really recur to me. It's not just like flipping through the mental channel. There's just something that always comes back. Let's say you always have the thought about doing harm to someone. You want to ask yourself, what is the feeling? Either while I have the thought, I'm not talking about the anxiety about the thought, but something before, or what is the feeling like, leading on to having the thought. I had a client who told me about exactly this pattern of doing harm, and she realized that whenever she felt somehow trapped in a situation where she didn't feel like she had enough space, or she wasn't able to, take a time out and just be on her own because there was this feeling of expectation, I cannot let people down, so I have to stick around even though my introvert needs really a little attention here, that thought popped up. So it was a thought of powerlessness. It wasn't a thought of getting rid of these people. It was a thought of, I need to somehow assert myself. I need to somehow have boundaries. And that thought alerted her to that. And when she was able then to set boundaries and say, you know what, I just need a little space, those thoughts didn't appear again. Because whatever was the big alarm bell made actually her, now take action and change something. Another client of mine told me about a thought that was about suicide. And that thought always came up. And upon, every time he heard about suicide, he, felt like, oh my God, what if I could do this? What if I would be the one? Could I really do this? And drove him nuts. And looking back, he realized that what actually happened was when he was young, a kid that he knew from school had committed suicide. And for years and years and years, he was thinking, could I have prevented this? Could I have seen the signs? And if he could do this, could I do this too? So there was all this confusion about this. And he had to go back and really work on that confusion to finally separate himself from what happened with someone else and to himself, because he realized, so this is like a bleed over from the past and has nothing to do with what's really going on with me. And when I go back to myself, when I had these thoughts about suicide, I know that it had a lot to do with me feeling overwhelmed. So there was a thought about, I just want to have peace, I want to have an exit, I want to be done with this, all the stress, and had nothing to do with me actually wanting to end my life, but it was just this feeling of, somehow finding again some place where I didn't feel so stressed and overwhelmed. And that sense of powerlessness I had to work on. So whatever those thoughts are telling you, they may be telling you something about that you need to build confidence and trust in yourself, that you need to find ways to have better boundaries and speak up on your behalf. It may be that you're realizing that you are really out of balance, or I had for a while a thought when I was in residency that I wanted to crawl like a little mouse into a hole because I literally wanted to disappear. And I was looking on walls for little cracks where I could hide in. And again, this was an obsessive, intrusive thought, and it just made me feel, or it made me realize how much I felt under pressure during this time, and I hadn't really learned how to deal with pressure. Well, until I did learn it. So the shrinking into a little size of a mouse when you're 6'4" isn't really possible, but it was certainly something that a part of my mind would have loved to do. So after you get more information on what the thought actually is trying to tell you and what's really the metaphor behind it, look for ways to address it. Maybe you need to work with someone that helps you to resolve the confusion of the past, or maybe you want to learn ways to really self-regulate and de-stress, or maybe it is simply something where you would have to say, I need to build my confidence again. I need to become more self-reliant, because if I don't, I certainly will feel much more, again, these thoughts trying to take my attention. So here is a question. I love it. Thank you so much that you are asking a question. So what would you tell someone who has illness OCD? That is something that I often see with clients, this sense of what if I'm ill, and at the core of it, often it is a distrust in yourself. A distrust in your body. And it is really something that creates so much anxiety, because if you cannot even trust your own body, well, where can you hide out? What can you lean into? And maybe there was a time when your body was feeling like, letting you down, or you felt betrayed by it. Maybe there was an accident, or maybe you have seen someone who got ill, and then you feel like, well, this could happen to me. But what's really important is that you do work on rebuilding this trust, and that you're realizing your body is not against you. Your body is actually for you, and your body has these magical ways every day to keep you healthy, whether it's detecting any viruses and bacteria that need to be eliminated, or seeing cells that could potentially become precancerous and also getting rid of them, or helping you just to find nourishment even in a Diet Coke and a Twinkie. Your body wants to support you. And what needs to change is how you see your body and how you appreciate your body. And that makes a huge difference. And sometimes the symptoms that you may feel when you have this illness OCD can also tell you something, which I find very interesting, that often people come to me with heart pain issues, chest pain, and they worry if they have some kind of a heart attack waiting to happen. And those people are absolutely healthy and young, but they are tight and they are closed off, and they often feel somewhat that they have to guard themselves. So that pain is actually much more related for them to realize, I need to remove that wall around my heart. I need to open up again, also to myself. I need to trust again. And that de-stressing makes such a big difference, because when they shift away from, oh yeah, this is something wrong with me, to thank you so much for giving me this awareness through this pain, it actually is the beginning of their journey of healing. And that is exactly the same thing with these intrusive thoughts. It can be the beginning of a journey of coming back to your wholeness. So don't be afraid of those thoughts. Realize, maybe I have plenty of thoughts that I can just let go of, but there are maybe some thoughts that I don't really pay attention to, and I do need to pay attention to them, because I need to see what they want to tell me and how through those thoughts I can actually gain a greater sense of myself, a greater awareness of what I need to work on to heal and ultimately to evolve. So whatever our mind is doing, I believe there is a purpose behind it, there is an opportunity behind it, even though if it may feel initially scary and overwhelming, it's up to us to do something that is actually bringing our power back and taking the opportunity to see our mind as an ally and not as our enemy. Hi, Dr. Friedemann here. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. If you're interested in learning more about fear and anxiety, here you'll find guided meditations, webinars, and interviews with some of the most renowned experts in the field of empowerment. Delve into the over 230 videos and more to come every week.